Hello and welcome to TVOL, where we talk about tactics and their evolution. Today we're going to be reflecting on a match in the Premier League between Aston Villa and Manchester United, which finished in a 2-2 draw. We're going to be focusing today on the perspective of Manchester United and what this match means for their tactical approach going forward. Now, before we do that, we're going to be looking at the pre-match context and the form for both of these clubs going into the match. We're going to be looking at form from the perspective of expected goals and expected goals against, which generally speaking is more reliable than looking at the outcomes or the goals for and against. It's a measure of the number and the quality of chances created, expected goals, and the number and quality of the chances conceded, expected goals against. You can see that after Gerrard's first match, which was against Norwich, noted on the chart, a narrowing of the gap, coming to the point where they're conceding more or less as many chances as they are creating. So an improvement in form on both sides, both on the defensive and on the attacking side. Looking at the same data for Manchester United, you can't really say the same, that there's been a definitive improvement, at least on both sides of the match. So when Rangnick took over, it was in a bit of a chaotic state as far as results and performances were concerned. He arrested that from a defensive point of view initially, but we do see a worrying increase towards the end there on expected goals against or chances conceded, whereas from an attacking point of view, United are really lacking cohesion, which is one of the things we're going to look at for the rest of this video. Now we're going to take a look at some data from the match itself. Both the expected goals, so the quality of the chances that each team created, and things like the number of shots that each team had. And it's a really interesting contrast here. So if you look in the middle, first of all, 13 shots by Aston Villa, 13 shots by Manchester United, 6 on target for Manchester United, 9 on target for Aston Villa. But when you zoom in on the quality of the chances that were created, Aston Villa created twice as many. From my point of view, I think this match has been mischaracterized or misdiagnosed. There's the idea that United were really on top for the first 30 minutes, could have put the game to bed and all those sorts of cliches. I really didn't see it like that. I think certainly overall United were outplayed, as they were in the FA Cup match. United in general have better players, better quality of players. Villa had a system to make the best out of their quality of players. Manchester United absolutely did not. And we're going to be looking at this from an attacking perspective on both sides, Villa and United, and just reflecting on how much more cohesion there is in Aston Villa's play versus the complete opposite for Manchester United. So first of all, we're going to be looking at the Man United perspective and reflecting on how their attacking approach was, in my opinion, way too individualistic. Let's explain what we mean. So Elanga down the left-hand side, this is a couple of minutes before half-time, being closed by a Villa player there just ahead of him. Elanga had a promising and energetic match. He found himself often in good positions, but he received a distinctive lack of support from his teammates, as did Greenwood, for example, which we'll come on to in a minute. So here we see Elanga, same sequence of play. 4 seconds later, in fact, he's down the left-hand side. He's in a decent position. There's space, obviously, behind the Villa player who's fronting him up. You've got Fred and Cavani pointing at something, maybe to recycle the ball, but they're not making the best out of this opportunity. Elanga then plays the ball, a difficult pass, puts Fred under pressure, and Villa end up winning the ball back. Now we move on to later in the match, just in the 74th minute rather, Dalot, I've often heard that name pronounced, not 100% sure which is right. I'm going to go Dalot for now. Switches the ball to the left-hand side. Fernandes picks it up. And what United do is they get the ball quite effectively to their most promising attacking or most talented attacking players, and then they don't support them. They don't get men around them. They don't make enough runs. Fernandes drives into a dangerous area, plays the ball as a 1-2, off Cavani, nothing wrong with that. The space starts to open open up ahead of Fernandes, but what we see happening next is absolutely nothing. I mean, I think it's a tackle, it might have been a foul, or Villa recover the ball. It doesn't really matter. You can see Fred standing still, you can see Elanga standing still. So what United often do at the moment is they'll have two players around the ball, but that's not enough to create an overload. You know, they're not that good. They're not a team of Maradonas or Messis or peak Ronaldos where they can just run around the opposition. You can even see some aspects of this individualistic style in United's second goal. So Fred closes down the ball, plays the ball left to Fernandes, having won it back from the misplaced pass from Sanson, I think it was, for Villa, who then got substituted and kicked some stuff away. Fernandes scores, but if he hadn't have had that opportunity, if the Villa players had closed him down, there's very few other options available to him. Here, I think this is just slightly earlier in the game, just after the 60-minute mark. You have Fred picking the ball up from Dalot, I think, plays it into him. And then Greenwood takes the ball for a run down the right-hand side. And there's a lot that's positive about this. United are progressing the ball into the final third. Great. That's something that they haven't done in recent times particularly effectively. But Greenwood here, I think his mentality is, and I think this is an expectation in general, as I've mentioned, of United more talented players being given the ball and then are expected to do some magical with it, you know, create something for someone else. Or score themselves. And Greenwood, I think, has that weight of expectation. Of course, he's effective off the right as well as his left foot. He narrowly misses, so it may seem harsh to criticise, but look at the distance between Greenwood and the rest of his teammates. They're waiting for something to happen rather than trying to actively support him. You see Elanga with his head in his hands. I mean, you get that, of course, when a player misses a chance, but if he'd cut the ball back, it would have been a tap-in. You can debate endlessly whether he should or whether he shouldn't, but I think it is yet another example of individualistic play for Manchester United. And on a more positive note, let's look at the tactical approach from an attacking point of view of the more collectivist Aston Villa. So we picked the action back up just after the 30-minute mark. So this would be the turning point in the match after United's supposedly fantastic first 30 minutes, which I don't think is true. But anyway, Fred ends up making a wayward pass, one of the deficiencies in his game. Cavani is unable to get the ball under control. And the point here really is that in this counter-attack situation, Aston Villa converge around the ball. They quickly get bodies around the ball, and what ends up happening is Buendia kind of sidesteps Matic, takes the ball probably too easily away from him. But the focus here is not on players like Matic and their individual performances, but the collective approach by Aston Villa. So they break quickly and they break in a narrow way. And narrow play is not always a negative thing, despite maybe what some Manchester United fans might think. Buendia moves the ball towards the final third. He plays the ball to the left-hand side to Watkins, who ends up having a good chance. Later on, just before 50 minutes, Digne is down the left-hand side. You wouldn't know that this was his debut. You'd think that he'd be playing in this system and with these players for a while. He plays the ball into Watkins. Watkins then checks out towards the touchline to look for other options. He ends up playing the ball into Ramsey. And look at, they have four players around the ball in support of the man in possession. Ramsey then drives towards Fred. He plays a 1-2 with Buendia. Buendia then, of course, being a 1-2, plays the ball back to him, hence the zigzag pass approach. Ramsey drives into that space, and De Gea makes a smart save. And we can see these patterns reflected in Villa's two goals. So the first one here, Mings unexpectedly makes a slaloming run forward. Villa have players around the ball. Coutinho and Chukwuemeka, I think is his name, is the other substitute. They play the ball off each other quite effectively. The ball ends up breaking to the right-hand side, where Coutinho, I think Fred gets the touch here, plays the ball into Ramsey, who then smartly finishes to De Gea's left-hand side. The point, though, here is not things like the quality of the finish, because that's obvious, but is the extent to which Villa have two, but more often three or even four players around the ball to support the player in possession to make the best use of that opportunity. And the equalising goal, Mings, you wouldn't say is one of the more talented ball-playing defenders in the Premier League, but he knows what's expected of him, and his distribution was good in this match. He plays the ball between the lines. Again, as you can see here, Villa have players around the player in possession. The ball then goes to Buendia, who had, I think, a very effective game individually and as part of the system. Drives into the centre of the field, reverses the pass out to the left-hand side, and that's Ramsey, yet again making more of a name for himself. Came in for some criticism from Gerrard for his first half performance, but turned it around. He looks up and finds Coutinho. He finds himself in a position where it's more or less impossible to miss. But again, the point here is around the extent to which Villa are playing in a collective system, making more, not less, than the sum of their parts, and it's really, really encouraging from an Aston Villa perspective. Flipping back now to the Manchester United point of view, this isn't new. You can see it reflected in the Wolves game, you can see it reflected in most, if not all, of the performances so far. From an attacking point of view, they're doing a lot of things right, but then they have great players going forward. Here you can see in the pictures, Sancho, who was much maligned for his performance, but he wasn't supported. Greenwood ended up getting substituted. He also wasn't supported on the ball. Why does any of this matter? If you look at this match, you look at previous matches, and you look at this pattern of data coming from WhoScored.com, which is about where shots were taken from. So if we roll back to the beginning of the video, we saw that Aston Villa had twice as much XG, in fact slightly more. They had same number of shots, a similar-ish number of shots on target. But look towards the right-hand side versus the left, where Villa are taking their shots from. We can all, if you follow football closely, call to mind how, for example, the Guardiola approach under Manchester City, the cutbacks that they achieve, they end up taking opportunities and shots from high probability situations. United are much more individualistic. Greenwood, very, very promising player, no doubt about that, ends up taking too many shots from distance. I don't think that's his fault necessarily. I think it's a fault of the lack of cohesiveness in the system that they are playing. I think it is partly about mentality, but you know, it's something that they have to get. It's something that they have to get right. I think there can be some changes to the personnel and to the formation which would help with this, but it's also about the mentality of, simply put, supporting your teammates, not expecting them to beat 1, 2, 3 players and put the ball into the box. Maybe at times the Premier League used to be about that type of approach, but United, whether they're playing against Manchester City or Chelsea or teams like West Ham, or in this case Aston Villa, have less resources, less money spent on transfers and wages. They are really being outplayed and outthought from a tactical perspective. Because if you look at the amount of money that Manchester United spend supporting their playing staff in terms of wages, it's comparable to Liverpool and Chelsea, and it isn't really so far from Manchester City. So from left to right, we're looking at an estimate, I think, from company accounts from the prolific Twitterer, Swiss Ramble, who publishes some really interesting stuff about the financials of football. So Manchester United are paying a similar amount to the 3 clubs there who are way in front of them from a points perspective. And from bottom to top, we're looking at the points so far attained in the Premier League. So you can highlight, for example, West Ham are paying a lot less in wages, but generating a better return on the field. From my point of view, Manchester United have, a top heavy, but a very talented squad, and it is very, very clear that they are not making enough of that talent. And my observation is the mentality, to some extent the tactics and the personnel, but also the mentality is wrong, along the lines of give it to our most effective attacking players, see what they can do, see what kind of ball they can deliver into the box, and so on, rather than thinking about more advanced systems of play, which obviously Rangnick, being so-called godfather of German football tactics, is trying to put into place. I don't think anyone would suggest he doesn't have the ability or experience to do that. But when we look at what's happening in reality on the pitch, they are barely making any progress. So what can Manchester United do to improve their attacking output? What tends to happen is that players like Alanga or Greenwood or Rashford or Sancho, whoever it might be, they end up picking up possession in promising areas, but they end up relatively isolated. So they need to bring players across to support that. So in this particular setup, it could be Greenwood shifting across, it could be Telles taking a risk by pushing up to support the player in possession, create an overload, and then progress from there, switch the play, whatever the tactic might be. I think the much maligned 4-2-2-2 is one option. I don't really understand why they didn't persevere with that, other than the clamouring to get some width back in their attacking play. But it doesn't need to be one or the other. I think Van de Beek, for example, seems to have a bit of a cult following. If he comes into the side, then that allows them to play three proper midfielders. Fernandes, of course, is more of a forward than a midfielder. Playing in that narrow formation at times allows them to shift across to the wide areas to support with more compactness, as Rangnick would put it, the player in possession. It also helps them out of possession. Of course, the two forwards that they would play in that system, either a 4-2-2-2 or a midfield diamond, they need to pull wide at times, and or rotate with the fullbacks. So it's not a case of playing in a really narrow and constricted way and sort of clogging up the centre of the park. They sort of expand and contract that formation depending on the circumstances of the match. And thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, please express that by hitting the like button. While you're there, you may as well subscribe to the channel, and why not leave a comment with your thoughts, and I'll get back to you. And we will see you next time.